Musings of a Modern Conservative. Short Essays on Various Political Topics by Thomas Hamilton. Section 1. Musings Involving Political Association. Essay 3. On the Conservative Utopia. To say that the conservative disagrees with the liberal version of utopia is to understate the contempt that a conservative feels for simply being asked to think of such a wretched place. The worst thing a conservative can and could ever think of is a place where their individual labor has no value. Although the true conservative, as is their nature, prefers to be left to their own devices, of hearth and home, they also recognize a need to form a society. What does the conservative society look like, though? What are its pillars and foundational structures? What drives the conservative towards and away from their utopia? Do conservatives even recognize their own utopia in general, or do they merely brush it aside as a passing fad? Where does the conservative derive their need to form a society from? Isn't the point of conservatism to create an existence, that which has no government, no rules, and no authority? Isn't true conservatism the view that all that which one can do and accomplish belongs to them? In essence, isn't the real conservative one who despises the very notion of government? Yes, but the conservative takes a more practical view of their utopia. The conservative begins their thinking from early childhood, I suppose as I don't know for sure, by asking, how can I make myself a better person? The conservative then sets about what is often the rest of their lives attempting to accomplish this goal. The conservative then finds at some point in their life that their values, moralities, and hard work can only do so much for them. Not all individuals have the same morals, values, and work ethic as them, and, as in some cases, they have none. Wouldn't this be the most frustrating of all existences, to find that all you wish to do, all you wish to accomplish, has no value? Wouldn't it also be equally, and in some cases, more frustrating if there were those out there trying to tell you that your most trusted value has in fact no value, that your individual morals have no place, that you should be giving infinitely in some cases to those who do not share your same ethics, including work? Shouldn't the rest of the world simply work hard and earn all their labor? If one person works harder than another, don't they get to benefit from this? And by that token, doesn't it also benefit the rest of the world? Doesn't farming, and then exchanging that good, benefit not just yourself, but others as well? If you didn't farm, then who would? Maybe you can farm faster and produce more for those around you, and rather than having one good for those around you to benefit from, you now have two. Who could rightfully deny you that extra value, and not simply monetary value, but the notion that the extra work has extra value? Isn't the two greater than the one? If the two is greater than the one, doesn't this then necessarily have more value? If one values such labor intrinsically, then if it's removed from you, isn't that a violation of your values? Isn't the taking from one without permission theft? Why would anyone give to another who they don't feel has earned it? Isn't it better to have everyone make two? Even if they don't get there, isn't it better that they try rather than beg? If we all simply earned and acted in such a moral manner and refused to take that which was not ours to begin with, would there need to be laws? No theft, murder, rape, etc.? Aren't these the foundations of morality? As they all take something from another without permission, property, life, physical health, etc., the conservative begrudgingly accepts that this place, where no immorality occurs, will never exist. How then best to go about creating a place of morals and values, even an imperfect one? Conservatives go about this by making two types of laws. The first are those types of laws that protect a conservative's values, namely labor. The second are moral laws, those laws that protect individuals or groups of individuals from other individuals or other groups of individuals. In the first instance, the conservative views that there needs to be some protection in place to protect the labor of an individual from theft and servitude. How then to go about protecting the labor of an individual? Can an individual's labor truly be protected? And if it can, what quantifies one's labor? The conservative, as of yet, can come up with only one answer: money. Does this money, though, really stand for one's labor? Couldn't there be other ways of quantifying the rather ambiguously unquantifiable concept of labor? Couldn't it be said that if no one starves to death, that could be a measure of success? Well, there could be other measures. Wouldn't they all fall short of the individual's labor? Not that helping others is somehow wrong or less important, but isn't the point of being an individual all about seeking out one's own goals? Can an individual's goals also help out society? Money may be the keepsake of labor, but it does not protect it. It merely quantifies it, impartially, and without bias. The real question is, What type of law does the conservative use to create an ordered method to obtain money? Such laws would need to protect and insulate the labor of one from the malfeasance of another. The question then becomes, how is the rest of society protected from the individual's tyranny and removal of their ingenuity? All laws of the monetary nature necessarily, at least in the mind of the conservative, favor one over another. How can a society willfully favor one individual over another? Doesn't that go against the morality of the conservative? Isn't it best to create and earn, and then create and earn again? Shouldn't society favor no individual? Isn't the highest moral objective to be a moral and ethical individual? How could a conservative truly justify favoring one individual over another? There are two general ways a conservative does, and still justifies these actions within their utopian view. The first is by giving the individual temporary protection to ensure that they have been amply compensated for their labor. An example would be patent laws. A patent law protects the ingenuity of one person from the theft of that ingenuity by the rest of society. The second is by ensuring that two or more individuals will do what they have promised to do, in other words, contracts. Do these laws and rules go against the conservatives' utopia? In short, the answer is yes. But the real question is, do they make the conservative utopia obsolete? Isn't a view that individuals have great value worthwhile? Can't an individual exist as an individual within a group of other individuals? Couldn't it also be said that immoralities and valueless individuals exist? Since these few individuals exist, don't the majority of moral conservatives need to create rules by which they can by some measure protect both themselves and others from immoralities? Doesn't this then protect the conservatives' values? If by protecting one individual from another, doesn't it still in some measure recognize that individual? Then who to enforce these values? And what should such a grouping of individuals, the definition of the conservative society, act like? And how to make such a society? Next, the conservative must create a government. The one thing that a conservative despises most of all is the one thing that a conservative cannot exist without. In order for a conservative to get as close to their utopia as possible, they must give up the most integral part of their utopia. What type of government would allow the individual the least restraint with the most amount of order? How could a system go about offering large amounts of order without interfering with an individual's responsibilities and rights? Wouldn't it have to, by its nature, require one individual to make laws over another? Isn't this going against the very requirement of the very essence of the conservative utopia? It would. But couldn't it also not go completely against the conservative utopia by enacting laws from the above two categories? Couldn't it also go in line with the conservatives' utopia by only enacting a few laws that are practical in nature? Thus, the conservative elects individuals who are given the authority to enact laws so that the morals and values of the conservative are maintained in a kind of ordered chaos. Even more perplexing is that the conservative enacts their laws and regulations not out of a need to contend with another group or other individuals, but aren't they enacted as a way of protecting their morals and values? Aren't these morals and values devoid of any other influence? In other words, they are mutually exclusive from all other outside forces. Isn't the movement away from their utopia a matter of practicality? The conservative realizes that the laws and rules they create must in some measure be of a practical sense, whereas the liberal is moving toward their utopia because of outside forces. The conservative moves away from their utopia to form a more practical association with the world. What argument, though, does a conservative have to justify this need for a practical approach to a government? Isn't a government simply a large collective? Couldn't it be said that the conservative utopia is a nice thought, but that the liberal utopia is in fact more practical, because in order for either to create their utopia, they use a government? If a government is a kind of collective, isn't it the conservative that is truly always striving for their utopia and not the liberal? Wouldn't it then be that the liberal already has their utopia in some way or another? The conservative goes about making their utopia practical by reasoning that some things an individual cannot reasonably do, as no one individual uses them, and thus, much like their families share certain things, so must they share other responsibilities with others as well. What about a road? What about a common defense? What about a park? Couldn't it be said that some things a group of individuals use, and that these individuals would naturally decide as individuals to as a group create? Just as a family gets together to make a large meal, couldn't a society come together to pave a road, Hire policemen, firefighters, and other common personnel. Is this really a collective? Isn't this just a group of individuals acting on their own moral self-interest, deciding that without such services, that all other individuals would suffer, including in some measure themselves? Isn't it also the case that individuals then form these governments to do exactly that? Rather than forming a collective to benefit the collective, doesn't the conservative form a collective to benefit the individuals within the collective? In the view of the conservative, isn't it more practical to give up a little piece of their utopia in order to form an environment where their labor and individuality have value?